Well. Acolyte, episode 5 wasn't half bad. Now, I will admit I was wrong. I didn't think that they were going to give us the culmination or the story after the cliffhanger that was episode 4. I didn't think they were going to do it. That's not a typical trope that is used in television shows. They give you a cliffhanger and sometimes the next episode isn't what is happening after that cliffhanger. And honestly, when it comes to this show, I'm shocked they did it that way. But honestly, I mean, I'm impressed. Look, when this episode did start, I kind of thought that they weren't going to go that route. I really didn't think at first. Because, look, this opening shot was of Osha laying on the ground, seemingly unconscious. And I kind of thought, like, well, she's unconscious. This is the perfect opportunity to go into her mind and do a flashback of what happened on her home world when she was a little kid, when there was a fire, that whole thing. Like, that was a perfect opportunity to do it. And I kind of thought that's what they were going to do. But I tell you what, they didn't do it, and that's okay. Now, honestly, this episode did give everybody, at least it appeared to give everybody what they wanted. Like I said, this episode wasn't half bad, but it just appeared to give everybody what they wanted. Look, Smilo Ren, as he's called, a.k.a. Sith, aka Khmer, was wrecking shop with the Jedi. And it was completely awesome if we could have actually seen what was going on. Because honestly, let's face it, we didn't see what was going on 90% of the time because it was dark. But don't forget, this had a $180 million budget, people. $180 million budget for this show. And everything was hidden in the dark. Okay, I get it. Look, this was a cool thing. This was cool. Don't get me wrong. This is cool. This is cool. But, yeah, Smilo Ren was menacing. He was relentless. He's exactly what a Sith should be to the Jedi who have not seen a Sith in roughly 900 years. That's what it should be. So that was well done. I just wish we could have seen it. Again, not half bad. And I want to keep reiterating that. Not half bad. Interesting side note, Smilo Ren appeared to be armored in a rare metal called Cortosis. And according to Wikipedia, Cortosis was a metal that had a very high energy absorption rate and transmission coefficients, which allowed even energy of a blaster bolt to be dissipated upon contact. One of the strongest minerals in the galaxy, Cortosis could even withstand the blow of a lightsaber and briefly short out its blade. There was a couple really cool scenes where you would see that. There was a scene where Smilo Ren would punch a lightsaber and the lightsaber would just dissipate, and the Jedi would be like, why isn't it working? He headbutted a couple of lightsabers with his helmet and it would dissipate. Those are some cool tactics and cool things to see. Again, not half bad. There are interesting moments. There are cool things in this episode. When you sit there and take a look at the 3 or 4 previous episodes of this show, and then you get an episode like this that has flashes of coolness and awesomeness. You sit there and you're like, why couldn't we have seen this before? But again, the cool factor of this episode is just shrouded in darkness. No pun intended, because of there being a Sith user, or an Acolyte, or dark side user. Look, but prior to showing up in the Acolyte, this Cortosis was only ever talked about or seen in books and comics, so it's cool to see it in live action. Again, credit when credit is due. That's something I will do with my review and my discussions on things. I will give credit where credit is due, and there is credit due here. That's cool to bring this kind of stuff into live action. Things like this are cool. Yeah, I'm going to say it. It's cool. It's cool. And again, while all this I guess, cool. Again, we wish we could have seen most of it. While this was going on, I have to say, I'm still unsure if this redeems his Mary Poppins arrival at the end of episode 4. No, nothing can forgive his Sith Mary Poppins entrance. I'm sorry, it doesn't. That was still ridiculous and stupid. But again, like I said, 4 episodes prior, why couldn't they be interesting and cool like this? And again, with Khmer, with the Sith, with Smilo Ren, whatever you want to call him, his reveal of being Khmer was anticlimactic because these writers are not good at not being predictable. I've said it multiple times. This show is painfully predictable. It's just painfully predictable. And I love the little Sith kebab that he does to the Jedi here. It's fantastic. But if I'm being honest, I did have a couple of gripes with this episode. Not a couple. But one in particular is when Smilo Ren, Soul asks him who he was.
What are you?
I have no name. But the Jedi like you might call me Sith.
That doesn't necessarily mean he is a Sith. There's a big debate going on right now in the social media universe that says he doesn't say he's a Sith, so he must not be a Sith. A lot of people are saying this is the birth of the Knights of Ren. Could it be the birth of the Knights of Ren? Could it be? Maybe. Maybe he isn't a Sith. I don't know. I don't think that these writers are smart enough to create the Knights of Ren in this show. They haven't been smart enough to this point. Leslie Henlin isn't smart enough to this point. I don't see that being the case. They're absolutely dumb enough to make this a Sith. But he's a Sith. He's a Sith. Now, another issue that I did have was how they made Jecki, rest in peace, look far superior than the Jedi Knights in this show. Specifically in this episode. The Jedi Knights were just getting their asses handed to them by Khmer. He was just beating their ass nonstop. And yeah, Jecki gets to go one-on-one with them, and she holds her own really, really well for a few minutes. Like, really well. Come on. Like, that doesn't make any sense. She's a Padawan, a very young Padawan, compared to these Jedi Knights and Masters. The only reason this happens is because of bad writing and or plot armor, I guess. I mean, think about it. Honestly, though, well, hold on. Before I get to that, there was this one scene where Smilo Ren is running through the forest trying to hunt down May. It was so bad. Like, the directing is terrible. The edits, there was so many times that scenes were edited and cut so haphazardly. It was terrible. Terrible. But again, I need to stop acting like Smilo Ren is the main character here, because he's not. He's not the main character of the show, and it needed to make sure that it focused on the main characters of the show, May and Osha, and that they were treated well. But they didn't. Unfortunately, in an episode like this, the writers did nothing to help push the story forward in any meaningful way. Neither of them did anything but kind of get lost in a room like puppies in a brand new room. Like, where do we go? What do we do? Running into a wall. Like, they didn't know what to do. Sure, Jecki had a little moment against May, but it did really nothing for the story. And yeah, this episode is dark, not just visually, but how they handled so many deaths. Specifically one I was actually a bit shocked with. The Acolyte straight up Man of Steel Jord. That's right, he Man of Steel Jord. I could hear the Jord Horde. Sorry, yeah. I heard them cry out as he snapped Jord's neck. Cavill Superman would be proud, let me tell you. But for how solid the first 20 minutes of this episode was, because to be fair, those 20 minutes had a lot of what I've been asking for, just all clouded and hidden in darkness, really. But the final 7 minutes went back to everything that has been wrong with this show. Painfully predictable tropes, terrible acting, and writing were on full display. Just terrible. Ridiculousness of May in the span of the first 2 episodes, going to be full loyal to her apprentice to her master, wanting to turn herself into Jedi, giving up her master because she saw her sister, then deciding to fight her sister and steal her identity, to infiltrate the Jedi and exact revenge. Oof, her writing is really bad. But then you have Osha, who is painfully naive to May, to the point where she constantly trusts her for everything she knows about her. Like, that's just ridiculous. She's written like she's a 12-year-old, but she's in her 20s. It's ridiculous. And the dialogue is so absolutely bad. Look, then you have May, who magically cuts her hair and it matches exactly what it looks like. Just 2 episodes ago, it was red. She has a big mark on her forehead as well. That disappears too. Like, it's just laughably bad. It's getting out of hand. It truly, truly is. It's bad. It's bad. Overall, this episode, I guess we could say, was the best of the bunch so far. If the remaining 3 can be similar to this, I'm sure I can see myself not dreading the rest of the season. Of course, I do have to question, now that Soul's on a ship with the ability to communicate to Coruscant, why doesn't he call the Jedi and tell them about the Sith he just fought? Canon broken again, guys. Anyways, hit that like button, hit subscribe. Tell me what you thought about this episode. Hey, drop a like. Join the Slavs Geek Tribe. Membership is now open. Do that. All that jazz. With all that said, I'll catch you all later.